Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first season of the YIF Podcast. Through the course of the podcast, we're going to be talking about our alumni journeys of transformation and impact. It is going to be hosted by Dr. Pramath Raj Sinha. This is the fifth episode of the podcast, and we have our alumni talking about pursuing previously unimaginable careers. And we have with us two of our alumni who have done just that. First, we have Deepak Bansal from YIF batch of 2012 and Shiv Sharma from YIF batch 2015 who will be talking about their journeys. Before we begin, I would like to establish some certain housekeeping rules. The first 40 minutes are devoted to the discussions. During this time, if you have questions, you can do so via the Q&A option. The next 20 minutes will be our panelists answering your questions. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Pramath to take the conversation forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vasudha. Thanks very much. Good evening, everyone, and happy Durga Puja, Shubho Vijaya, happy Pujo wherever you are, happy Dasera. We are coming in live this time from Delhi because I'm in Delhi. Deepak happens to be live from India, I should say, because Deepak happens to be in Jaipur, and Shiv, who's here in Delhi as well. We have a very interesting episode today because, as Vasudha pointed out, we are talking to two people who've gone on to do unimaginable things in their life, which they did not quite imagine they would be doing, given that they were, like me when I was there at 22, boring, nerdy engineers. So welcome, Deepak and Shiv. You will have to turn on your videos so that we can all see you. Welcome, both of you. Maybe we should start with Shiv. Shiv, can you tell us what you do right now?
Firstly, thank you so much, Pramath, for the introduction, and also thank you, the YIF team, for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. Well, as they say, YIF never leaves you. So to just answer your question, I'm currently teaching as a critical writing faculty at the YIF program at Ashoka. I'm also consulting with the Center for Studies in Gender and Sexuality at Ashoka right now. Recently, I finished my MA degree in historical studies from the New School for Social Research in New York, and I completed part of it actually in India because I had to come back to India in lockdown. So here I am right now working here with Ashoka.
So you are back working with Ashoka and YIF.
Yes.
And you are teaching on the writing program at YIF. Many people don't know that we now have a writing program that runs throughout the year. At least it was not there in Deepak's time. And so we have faculty like Shiv who own a few sections, right? How big are these sections now, Shiv?
Yeah, so I think this year they're roughly 14 each, and we do 2 sections per faculty, so roughly 28 fellows.
Right. So you are now, if they knew that you used to be an electrical engineer?
Yes, electrical engineer.
So I think some people might worry that they are being taught by the wrong people, but I guess it's good for an electrical engineer transformed into a good writer to be teaching all our alums, all our fellows. Thank you so much for coming back to Ashoka and YIF, Shiv. We love to get our alums back. Deepak, what are you up to these days?
Thank you, Pramath sir, for the warm welcome, and greetings all. It's been a pleasure and honor to be here. Right now, I am working with McKinsey in San Francisco office. My practice is focused mainly on fintech and emerging technologies. Right before that, I completed my MBA at Stanford, and I have been in a lockdown in India, so that has been another experience so far. And it's been a great journey, and it's very nice and very heartwarming to be in touch with YIF always.
So Deepak, you are already a celebrity at the YIF. I don't know if you know that, but those of the YIF alums who remember my orientation program, where you remember I make you make those posters and paste pictures and so on. We start that program with your video, Deepak.
So I don't think I can give any credit to myself, but all credit to you.
No, it's all because of your amazing story, but I'm sure they will love to hear, because the story stops before all of this that you introduce. So it'll be great. Everybody will be getting an update from you today live.
Thank you very much, sir. It's been an honor.
Shiv, can we talk about where this started and how you got to the YIF in the first place? Talk a little bit about growing up and then getting your engineering degree and then deciding to come to working and then deciding to come to the YIF.
Right. Long journey now I think about it. But yes, so I've been born and brought up in Delhi in a very sort of humble, typical middle class Indian family. Both my parents were actually, now they're retired, so were Delhi government school teachers. My father taught Sanskrit and my mother taught science into Delhi government school kids. So, we were always sort of we had a lot of emphasis on academics and so on. So, as you know, the story goes with such families. It was natural for me to go into engineering. I had good marks throughout in my school life. So I sat for the engineering entrance exams. I went to NIT Kurukshetra to do my bachelor's in electrical engineering, which was fun, a lot of fun. So I did well during that time. It was a very different experience because I think it was the first time I was away from home, from the comforts into an engineering college, engineering boys hostel, which has its own sort of life on its own. So that was it. At the end of my BTech, I took up campus placements without thinking too much. And I was working at this company called Alstom India Limited, which is one of the core firms in India doing fabulous work actually in the metro rail business in India. So I started working there. And, I was always very interested, I think, in sort of things happening around me in general, very curious as a child. Too. So at college, for instance, and I think that's what many engineers do when they don't know how else to think about their other interests. So I was very active in college fests, organizing debate competitions and so on. I used to read literature quite a bit. So all of that, just that it never struck me that this is something that I'm really passionate about. At the time and this is during the college, that I was also involved in a fair bit of queer and feminist activism in Delhi. So all my weekend trips to Delhi were often about this. But yeah, that was just a side thing to do. So I moved on to the corporate life. I was working in Alstom, which was a really good experience. I got to work on Bangalore Metro Rail projects, which were live at the time, also Delhi Metro Rail projects. Quite happy with the work, I think, but very gradual realization that started creeping in was, what do I do about all of these other interests? So, and this was 2014, when in fact India's, one of the biggest elections so far were going to take place. I remember that time, I think this feeling became strong that I was liking my work, I was good at it, but everything was just about that work life. Everything was about, even in the coffee breaks, talking about business acquisitions, mergers, how the work life has been, and so on. And I felt a very disconnect that, on the weekends, then I was going back to my feminist activism or reading literature, reading everything other than sciences and engineering. So I think, it just, at some point, suddenly I became very frustrated that why is that sort of gap between what I do, let's say, in the other time when I'm not in the office. So I think it was very funny because I just walked out of the blue one day into the office of my boss, told him that, I think I might want to try some other things in life. And at the time I had actually applied. I got to know about the YIF from one of my college seniors who had also come to the YIF in the previous batch. And, so yeah, it appealed to me. I had to put in my application. I shared this with my boss. He thought, this is interesting. If you really feel this is the right thing for you, maybe you should do it. So, and I hadn't heard back from the YIF, but, and I'm this also speaking about me, I'm a very intuitive person that way. So I just put in my papers. Really, the only plan A, B, C, whatever you call it, was that, if I leave my job, I will do home tuitions. I'm a science student, so I can give private tuitions in physics, chemistry, whatever. And, being in Delhi, that would give me fair, decent amount of money, which I actually ended up doing. So I put in my papers, I quit the job, I was doing tuitions. I mean, this was in my notice period that I actually did get a call for the interview from the YIF, which went well, but I hadn't still heard back on the decision. So I'd quit. I was doing tuitions, private tuitions in Delhi at my home. And then, thankfully the call to join YIF came in, and I was, okay, there it is. Bye-bye to tuitions. I'm on to
What was your parents' reaction to all this?
Yeah, I mean, initially there was, of course, a bit of tussle because they were like, why are you leaving this nice corporate job that you really like? And, and so a lot of people in my family are from the science background. And so, of course, the very typical idea of humanities and social sciences or liberal arts is, oh, arts wale bacche, but you go there if you are not good at studies and academics. So, of course, there was a bit of tussle, but I think they saw that I really wanted to try this out. So yeah, I mean, I'm really glad that my parents agreed to sort of to let me do this. Yeah.
Deepak, you came to the YIF for very different reasons. I don't think you were looking for such a big shift. But I think your journey is also very fascinating. So talk to us about what that was like.
Yes, that was really very interesting, Pramath sir. And I think for that, I need to give a little bit of context. Given my life so far, I really feel grateful for the level, the scope of the spectrum I have seen so far. It would be hard to believe that I was actually born in a village and I did my some years of schooling under a tree, and I was the first one actually to go to college in my family. And I'm saying all this to give a context that I literally have no idea in my life how I will do and what I will do. But I do had this very curious mindset since childhood. I remember myself seeing Discovery and National Geographic all the time when I will get that time. And I will just get any book I can, for example, okay, why this world is here. So I will start studying physics very deeply or something like that. So I always have this period mindset, but I didn't have any guidance whatsoever or any exposure. I think that was the challenge in my life. But I never give up and I always was trying. So what happened that, so just to add on this context, the situation was such that even after 12th, I didn't give any exams of AIEEE, IIT or whatsoever. And I was completely, I had just no clue. But with something happened, my friend used to come to ask me questions of physics and maths, and I do end up giving IIT exam. I went there, IIT Bombay, and with again some sort of ignorance, I just thought maybe computer science is the best branch, that's the one I should study, and I just tick marked that course, and I never got it, and I was very happy to say 15,000 rupees for the counseling for my father that time. And then I end up in an engineering.
So you actually but just to make the point, you actually got through JEE. You would have gotten into a legitimate IIT.
Yes,
but
definitely.
You applied for a branch which was obviously higher than what your rank could get that year.
Yes.
And you ended up not opting for any backups and saying, if I don't get computer science, though you didn't know what to.
Because I had no concept of branch. I had no concept of that certain companies come to IIT. I never done tuition in my life. So I thought, it's always one have to study ourselves. And that was my really thinking that time. And of course, I grew up helping my father's small business. So I thought in Jaipur, I can help him as well. And that's what I used to do during childhood.
That's what I remember, that you had actually decided that, chalo business karte hain father ke saath.
Haan,
right? I'll help my family, and that is what my family has done. Yeah.
Exactly, because that's what the mindset, right? Because that's why I didn't give any exams after 12th. But that curious mindset, that drive never fade away, and that really always keep pushing me to further. So I did enroll in a college in Jaipur to study computer science, but again that never satisfied me. I was always searching for more and more diverse experience, more knowledge, and that fire was every day, every minute. And even though I was doing very well in my college, one of the top rank holders, and got good job offers, that dean, I think, was your friend, and he recommended me YIF, and I think that really was turning point in my life, and I always thank him for that. I did have a few jobs. I did even have a funded master's that time abroad, but why it was so interesting to me that time, even though of course it sounds risky to me because that was the first batch and we really had no idea how it's gonna unfold in future. But I do had a faith on the people. I do had the faith, and what I believe is that I always follow my curiosity and something my heart goes to. And even though probably that was not the safest option, YF at that time, of course, now if I look at it, it was the best decision of my life. But that time it was not that easy choice. But I did follow my heart, and I thought, okay, other choices are very linear, and I've already been, not satisfied with so-called very linear and focused education system in India, and that's why YF seems to me the best option that time I could have. And seriously, I didn't have much expectation from YF that time, and I just thought it's one of the better alternative. But thanks to you, Pramath sir, and thanks to the whole team of YF, I think what we get and the experience we had was probably 100x better than the expectation we had.
Thank you for sharing that. Every time I hear your story, I feel like this is a program has done wonders for people, and I'm saying this in all humility. You all have taken advantage of this
Definitely
this program. Shiv and you, Deepak, fantastic stories. Tell us a little bit, both of you, about what it felt like during that 1 year. And Shiv, perhaps you can talk about. You were already primed for what you were coming into, so I think you pulled all of what you could get. I think I remember Deepak struggling with that year. Ki ye theek kiya, nahi kiya. Was it right? Was it not? Did I end up screwing up my future, or should I have done this? So I'd again like to hear the contrast between your two stories quickly about that 1 year and what it felt like, and then and quickly cover what you did after that. Shiv, you want to go first?
Okay, so I mean, it was such a sort of eventful year in so many ways. And you're right that, in some ways I was primed, that I knew that I really wanted to explore the terrain of humanities and social sciences. And that I think YF is did so much for, because, a breadth of subjects that we got to explore was great. I think one thing that also stood out for me there was, so yes, I knew that I wanted to move away from engineering and sciences in some way. I wasn't sure where I wanted to be. And I think it really helped me think through that in many ways. Just the way YF is such a self-reflective journey. And, just to ask yourself at every step, is this what you want to do? Is this not what you want to do? Why is that the case? And so on. It really taught me how to think through that. It gave me tools to think through that, but also I think people. So just people around me who were genuinely there with the sense of, exploration, with the sense of, okay, we know certain things about ourselves, but we also don't know these things about ourselves. And many of my batchmates, I think, were exploring that kind of thing. So, for instance, I knew that I had abiding interest in gender issues. But during my year, the ELMs that were offered, none of them really fit into that interest. So, I mean, and, thankfully, one of my batchmates, Garima and Karthik, we teamed up later, but we decided, well, we want to do something about it. We clearly have been thinking much about it. Let's turn it into an ELM. So I think that kind of thing where you could actually get together with people and say, we want to do something about what we feel. That's how, in fact, the rest of my career has begun. So the ELM was basically to propose a center at Ashoka which would provide a space for talking about issues of gender and sexuality. And at the time, again, we didn't have a very concrete idea about how it will shape up. But I think the guidance we got from not just faculty, so we got Professor Madhvi Menon at Ashoka to mentor our project, which was so helpful. And she's now been my mentor for life, in fact. But I mean, just everyone in very different ways. I know that I used to have so many conversations with Anu at the time about different things that I was thinking about at the time. So, but yes, I mean, through that struggle, but very important sort of learning curve that it was, the Center of Studies in Gender and Sexuality did get established by the end of my ELM and end of my year at YIF. And as I said, I mean, so I did come into the YIF with the sense of exploring something beyond sciences, but didn't have a very particular goal. This is what I wanted to do. So, just opportunity presented itself that the center was established. So they had to hire someone to take it forward. I took that up, just again, going by my gut feeling that this is what I want to do next. So for the next 3 years, this is what I really did. I was working at the center at Ashoka and really, managing it in every sense of the term. But I think that really taught me a lot, prepared me for everything that I did and I'm doing currently. Yeah.
And Shiv, yeah, I mean, looking at it from Ashoka's standpoint, it was a major contribution because between you and Madhavi and others, you literally built this center from scratch, your ELM team and then Madhavi and then you becoming part. I remember those years, you and she were really the only two people really there, right? I don't remember if there was anybody else. And then, of course, I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute, but you went on to do some amazing stuff, which was not expected at that time. So what a great story, because in a way, the ELM became the pivot for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Deepak, working abroad. Yeah. Who thought you'd end up in Japan? I couldn't believe it when you first told me. Tell us your story from what happened in that 1 year and how you ended up in Japan.
Definitely, Pramath. So as you can imagine, I already was lost, or you can say I didn't have a good enough exposure or before YIF. And once at YIF, you are thrown so many more options and so many more things, how lost one could be. And I think that was exactly me. I think I was, at certain points, I was even struggling with, I was not able to appreciate few courses. I was not able to appreciate why I'm there and that thing. But in that process, what happened, I was able to know myself. I was able to know what weaknesses were. And when I knew that, it was very painful at one point, I think I remember Pramath gave me some feedback during that time. And I was really thankful for that, because once you are in your own cocoon, which I was before YIF, everything seems nice. But once you are thrown in much multi-diverse, much higher level environment, you had challenges. But if you come out of that, you are a much better person and you know yourself better. So I think that journey was very transforming for me. And I was not able to appreciate till I go to real world, even till end, I knew I had few challenges and I'm learning new things and I'm knowing myself better every day. But that journey is painful for sure. But I'm glad that happened, because without that, I would not have been successful at all so far. In fact, I consider YIF as a turning point of my life for the kind of decision I was able to make and the journey I was able to have. And with all of that, I was exposed to many new words, many new knowledge, whether it's finance, whether it's arts, whether it's history, and a lot of amazing people and family. And with that confidence and knowledge, I was able to actually then follow my childhood dream, which was, to know the world and also to have a job which is much more broader in its nature rather than a very linear job. And that confidence YIF gave me, that capabilities and that perspective that YIF gave me, I was able to use all that to follow my dream. And then I applied to Japan, because during my undergrad I was in Taiwan and I see this high-speed rail being manufactured, and I did saw that in Discovery National Geographic before as well. And with that idea, and I just put all my mind and focus there. Okay, who manufactured these things? And I just did backward thinking, and I kind of focused there. I applied to maybe 100 of companies. It just happened that one of the executives from Tokyo happened to do a business trip in Delhi, and I was able to convince him for a presentation I made. It was a 2-hour pitch in his hotel in Delhi, and he kind of liked it. I kind of pitched how I can help them in business and how they should or what they should do in business in India, and all of that.
Do you think that pitch was made possible by the year you spent?
100%, because I didn't knew anything other than coding or electronics before that. Of course, I used to read myself a lot of stuff as well, but YIF gave me knowledge of economics, of history, of context, of, even how you communicate, and also kind of gave a lot of network and tools which I was able to leverage and reach out to the people. And with all of that, I was able to make that presentation. And once I reached to Tokyo, he invited me to Tokyo for a week. I talked to a few executives there, and somehow they liked me, and I was able to get this, one of the best job I can get. We were managing $15 billion projects, one of the biggest in the world. I was really the youngest with average team of 45 years, and I was able to head the project. And thanks to YIF for that, for sure. And that has been a transforming journey. I mean, YIF was itself a transforming journey for me, and then that was another step I had in my life.
So how does a guy from Jaipur who grew up in a village, has done engineering and then liberal arts, show up in Japan and is probably working with people from many different backgrounds and cultures and languages? That must have been a tremendous learning experience, but also very challenging.
It was, but it was what YIF already trained me for that. So I would say that context and perspective is very important. It's everything. And
you've already, by the way, used the word context 4 times in this talk.
Okay.
Before YIF, you probably didn't know context. Huh? I didn't know context.
Definitely.
I never got a liberal arts.
Definitely. The problem with Indian education system is so linear that one start identifying it himself or herself with just that, and they think the world is just that, which is not true at all.
Sorry, carry on. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's not. It's wonderful to hear you talk about context and perspective. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, we are just that, but that's how not the world works, because in work all different kind of people exist, and also we need all different kind of skills and knowledge, and we need to be comfortable, to handle with different people and skills, because just if you are educated just being engineer and you hang out with another 100 engineers for 4 years, that definitely doesn't train you for that. So YIF, I was able to interact with lawyers and writers, and that was so challenging for me. I was not able to accept them, that okay, how they are valuable, or like where they're coming from. And that 1 year of training, make me so much more freed and so much, have a much bigger perspective. So that training helped me to communicate with Japanese fellows, because even though there is communication gap in terms of language and culture, I saw where they are coming from, what background they had, and that training I had at YIF, I was much more easily able to mingle with them.
Thanks, Deepak.
And other thing I would like to mention is, before YIF, I think I would like to, it's very important, is the appreciation of different skills. And I didn't have that before YIF. Especially as a project manager in Japan, I need to have a very strong team which has different perspective and mindsets and skills. And before YIF, probably I would have hired similar people like me, because that's where you comfortable are. And that YIF shows me how different personalities and people with different perspective and context actually make much more stronger team. And that might sound very, a cliche knowledge right now, but at that age, when you're right after grade, it's extremely important, because once you go to real world and, you are very well prepared.
Yeah, people are now giving it the fancy name of cognitive diversity. So it's a good thing to have cognitive diversity on your team, and people with a growth mindset and so on. Of course, these are the newfangled jargon that has come in, but yeah, you're right. You were already kind of practicing that many years ago. We'll come back to your story, and it's fascinating, but we want to get back to Shiv. And Shiv, so setting up the gender studies and center at Ashoka to becoming a writing faculty at YIF. That's another kind of pivot that happened, right?
Yes, definitely. And definitely I didn't have this sort of bigger picture in mind at the time when I was working at the center. And, I definitely had a drive to do something that I wanted to do in this field, gender and sexuality, but it really been that journey where I realized that when you're pursuing something, it has to be step by step. So 3 years at Ashoka really were that for me. So I mean, I would have never imagined that I would go to the US to do a master's degree in the field of humanities. At the time I took it because, I was interested in these issues and feel I wanted to do something. But it was just that learning curve from things like, because I was in the Ashoka setup, attending undergraduate classes on campus without, without thinking that am I suited to it. I'm way older than these people to just learning so many things on job that gave me slowly the confidence that I'm learning something and I know I can talk about it. And in that way I think my mentor Madhvi was really sort of really helpful, and she really pushed me on this journey. During that time actually, then I finally in 2016 went to start. I mean, the first time, in fact, that was my first international trip when I went to the to speak on a panel discussion at the United Nations Committee on the Status of Women conference. And I was representing the center in a panel discussion organized by Wellesley College for Women. So, I mean, experiences like that. The same year, I actually went to South Africa for another conference to speak on behalf of the center at University of Pretoria. And, these are really things I would have never imagined. In my immediate family, nobody had ever gone abroad. And these were things that were beyond my imagination at the time. And I wasn't really planning that this would really become my thing. But it slowly gave me that confidence, keeping sort of really my focus on what I was learning at the time, making really the best use of what I'm given at a particular time, that I think slowly built that confidence in me that, maybe I'm prepared to take this up in a more formal academic manner. And I remember that I think second year at Ashoka, I was started thinking about applying to PhD programs, but suddenly then YIF, that sort of hub of resources that keeps throwing new things that you don't know about. So I heard about the Fulbright scholarship, and it was really just I think 2 weeks, 10 days roughly before the deadline. And then it seemed to be a very interesting idea that I'll get to do a master's. I wouldn't have to care about my funding, which I really had no means to support myself that way. And my parents were not very much in favor of me going abroad at the time because but I think then they saw the value in Fulbright. So I applied. In those 14 days, I did my best to submit an application that was, I hoped, was sincere and reflected my journey. And I think that worked. So I got the Fulbright scholarship, and I finally decided, okay, I should really do this. This will really tell me how I would thrive in the US for 2 years before I can take on bigger things like PhD, which is a 5-year-long commitment. So really, again, it was really just one step at a time. It was, again, still for me, it was not really about this thing about Fulbright being a big name. It was really just I wanted to go to the US and experience the academic culture there for 2 years. I did that. Sadly, again, I felt short of funds to do this. So, and, again, as I said, very sort of humble middle-class family. So I couldn't fund myself personally because Fulbright has a certain cap of how much money they pay towards your education in the US. So, well, then and YIF, of course, was so helpful with that. So I got to hear about other scholarship opportunities, applied widely. Again, thankfully, I got selected for the INLAC's Shiv scholarship, which was a harrowing interview, though, by the way. But thankfully, I got selected for it, who funded the remaining part of my finances, which were required for the education. And I went abroad to the New York City to do my master's in history, which was really just a sort of world of new experience. And I mean, I really just carried YIF there too, not just in terms of what I had learned, what YIF had prepared me for in terms of now being in US academic context, but also just, I found fellows who were already in the city in New York at the time, who really became my sort of emotional support circle because, the cultural shock and so on. So I think that's what it's been so far.
What a fascinating story, Shiv. Would you have ever imagined when you were at Alstom that 5 years later, literally 6 years later, you would be sitting here with all these rich experiences, right?
Not at all, not at all. And in fact, as I said, that I think I've been as a very sort of intuitive person. I just really try to focus first on what feels right at the moment. So, center field felt right at the time to work there, and then so on. So yeah, I mean, this was really not coming. And I remember that even because I was so sort of anxious that, I'm not able to figure out the remaining part of my funding after Fulbright, till then it wasn't real that I'm actually going to the US. Nobody in my family had gone there too. So, I had no clue what it'll look like. Who could tell me that? I mean, of course, my YF network really helped me that way, actually. But yeah, when I got there and it just, I don't know, it's been an incredible experience that way that I wouldn't have foreseen at all.
I have to say hats off to both of you for the grit and perseverance you've shown through this journey, because it's been it's not been easy, but you've constantly sort of progressed to something that's absolutely a symbol of sort of real leadership and excellence. So thank you for that story, Deepak. From there to McKinsey. I'm glad that McKinsey is still choosing the right people. Tell me what happens after you go to Japan and make your way through Japan and all of Southeast Asia, and then business school, and now at McKinsey.
Yes, Pramath sir. So I think I was still chasing the same thing, which like knowing the world, get exposed to all sort of different things, and so I have that bigger vision in my life, which is being very knowledgeable, being exposed out there. I have that hunger always since childhood, and I think whether it's YF, whether it's Japan, whether it's MBA, I think it's sort of the part of that same hunger and drive, and I think I would also like to say that having that bigger vision is always helps, because if I didn't have that, I would have really very well settled in Japan itself, because I was really enjoying my time there, and I had just amazing time. And it's to give an analogy, if someone wants to climb to Mount Everest, we would probably have to do all sort of different things versus climbing a local mountain near Delhi. And so having that bigger vision made me think, okay, I'm having nice life in Japan, was traveling all around Asia, and living very nice life, but then what's next? Does it it doesn't complete my vision. So I thought I had liberal arts education, I had engineering education, I thought I do like a business education, and also I do like the exposure of Western world, and the kind of things happen there. I do have a very good experience in East Asia and in India. So with that sort of mindset, I thought, okay, I should go to one of the top colleges there. When I dropped out from IIT Bombay, I do promise myself that one day I will go to the top college. So also that was back of my mind as well. And once I decided that, I focus all my energy and mind there. I do also want to convey that focus is really the key. I think many times a decision seems risky, but if we follow our heart, and even though it may sound risky at that time, if we put all our energy, I think some magic happens. And thanks to a lot of mentorship, especially from Pramath sir and many other people in my life, I applied. I got selected in a couple of schools. To Stanford, and
okay, you're not telling the whole story. So you insisted that you'll only apply to the top 3 schools because it was not worth going to any of the other schools. You got into 2 of them, then you chose Stanford.
Yes, and yes, and I think that was probably helpful. It was risky, so in the life sometimes the risk and rewards goes together. So it was risky for sure to apply to the 3 schools, but because of that, I was able to focus on the 3 schools, and I think probably able to do better. And I chose Stanford, and again, it was very transforming journey, because coming from Japan, I stayed there for 5 years, has made me a certain person, but US and Japan is very, very different in terms of how do they business, how they communicate. And again, I had to go through another transforming journey, and after that I was choosing few careers, and especially like in fintech and technology. McKinsey was always in my head, because even doing YF I thought so, but I think I was not really. I do had. It's not like I had fundamental problems, but I didn't have that exposure at that time in terms of communication, and I was lacking in somewhere. So I worked on those things for the next 5 years once I came to know about my weaknesses. And when I worked on that, I was able to get that opportunity, and I'm really enjoying my time there. And again, being exposed to different projects and different people and different industries. So I think I've been living this. I've been chasing my curiosity throughout my life, and still I'm doing the same. And hopefully, I would continue to move.
Yeah, people say living your dream. I think you are living your curiosity, because I do know that you are really hungry to experience the world.
Yes,
And
Pramath.
I think that has been quite the hallmark of how I've known you.
Exactly. And I think once we define our vision, so for example, I never feel bad stuck in traffic, or never feel bad like in waiting in the line, because I'm always reading something, always learning something, either in my mobile, or even if you go to mundane things like toilet, you can still learn something. So once we have that vision and that drive, I think our whole strategy changes, and I think we can optimize, or we can maximize the potential of our life.
Wow, thank you. I'd love to talk to you all to both of you more about so many things. I have so many questions, but I want to go to some of the questions that our audience is asking, and I will just relay them to you. So uh, I'll read out some questions that are meant for you, Deepak, and some for you, Shiv, so that you can start thinking about both the questions, and then one of you can start answering. So Deepak, for you, there are two questions which are relating to Stanford and McKinsey. How was your experience in Stanford? How did you answer the application question? What matters to you and why? I thought we asked that question in YIF as well. We used to. I don't know if we still do. Maybe you should compare those two, Deepak. And how is it like working at McKinsey? I think you spoke about that a little bit, but maybe you can think about that while I get to Shiv. So what was the experience at Stanford? How did you answer that question? And what was it like working at McKinsey? And Shiv, to you, uh, what do you think about pursuing gender studies in a context like ours in India? Can you speak more to how you look at the field and its future in the Indian context while drawing from your learnings?
I mean, maybe I can go ahead and address
Yeah.
that. And I think it's definitely been a thing to think about through my journey, because it's also a very specific field. It's not a field, even not forget about India. It's not even very. I mean, it's not institutionalized even in the West in the same ways, let's say, disciplines like history or sociology or psychology have been institutionalized. And I mean, honestly, some bit of it has been balancing the practicality versus the dream, which is why, for instance, when I went on the Fulbright to the US, I chose to be in a discipline which was broader. So I did an MA in history, historical studies, and I just, did a graduate certificate in gender and sexuality studies along with it. So I think that's one part of it. And, that's something I think YF also sort of taught me, in the sense, yes, we are interested in very specific issues often when we are passionate about one thing or the other. But it's always situated in larger context, whether it's a disciplinary context in academic terms, or larger social cultural context. So I think partly it was practical, but partly it was that I do need to have a bigger picture, disciplinary picture in my mind. And I think that's how I think about pursuing gender studies in India too. That and first thing is, I think it's especially because it's so, I think, full of complex sort of things about the current contemporary scene, and what is the sort of future of gender studies, which I thought was the interesting and exciting thing about it, that you could still do a lot, because the field, so to say, has not stagnated yet. But yes, I think what really helped me to come back and think of my career here in India in gender studies too, is to know that I do need wider grasp of things. I do need to place myself in larger sort of, not just sort of intellectual academic, but also social, cultural, political context. So that's really helped me. So right now, for instance, I'm teaching a critical writing to the fellows, and although my specific course that I offer is on gender and sexuality, but it's really helped. So because there are very few positions, for instance, which are available in gender studies across the universities in India. So but that's definitely been a thing always to keep in mind, that it's and it's in itself a very interdisciplinary field. So you cannot, in fact, engage with it fully without understanding sort of broader perspectives in which, broader sort of context in which specific questions of gender come up.
Okay. Deepak, you want to answer your question?
Definitely. I think to answer the experience at Stanford, the application and the experience at McKinsey would definitely need much more time, probably another web seminar on that. But I can be quick. And I think the Stanford experience was transformational to the least. And it was life-changing as well. The 2 years of experience was full of learning and exposure. Of course, it comes with its own challenges. I think there are a few parts of it. You learn a lot of subjects, business subjects like finance and how to deal with people and communication and lot of industries, and you get exposed to top leaders in business. I think that's one part. You again, get to meet with amazing, talented people. And I see a business school as another job. One should not take it as a study. Or I would say the same thing for YF as well. Think it's just you are not being paid, but think it as a paid job where you need to do your 100% when you are there. And if you had and go there with a vision. If you had a vision and if you take it as a paid sincere job, then you would do your best there for 2 years. And regarding the application, of course, one need to have a good vision, the practical vision to schools like Stanford do look at your various capabilities, whether your scores and whether your recommendation, whether what you have done so far. But also they want to look at what you think about the world, what your visions are, and whether it's practical, whether you are able to do it. So, of course, I'm happy to talk in much detail. Someone who has asked this question, please feel free to reach out to me. But one should have that. And regarding McKinsey, of course, I think it's another. It's as many people said, it's a business in practice. So once you go there, you apply to business knowledge and solve various business problems, and you get to deal with a lot of tough problems, and you get to know how to work it out in a team. So all the experience has been great. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but I think that's the summary of my experience.
No, I think you did. I think it's a tough question to answer in a short because the Stanford experience, the McKinsey
definitely. I can just throw out few jargons, but I think to talk in details, it needs time.
Yeah. I think this is a question to both of you, and I think you touched on it a little bit, but I think people are asking to delve in it a little bit more. Is that YF experience coming to study in Delhi? Very different experience from what you had. How do you cope with that very sharp transition? What are some things that you would give as tips to people on how you coped with it?
Definitely. I think I can start, Shiv, if you,
please.
You don't mind. I think my general philosophy in life is the pain and pleasures go hand in hand, and that's true throughout the life. People think that, okay, we can take pain now and the life would always be, fair and flowers, but that's not true. So I think one should have that expectation that, okay, if one want to transform, if you want to take use of anything, one has to go through some painful process. And, especially getting the feedback about your weakness is a tough thing. Getting to expect something new, which you didn't used to believe or you didn't used to have that exposure is a tough thing. And so if we go with that mindset, I think everything's become easy. And so I think wrong expectations about that, YF, you would just come to YF and YF would spoon feed everything. And, it's not that, because if YF would spoon feed everything, then you would not be ready for the real world. So having that right mindset would be very helpful. That would be my advice to someone who is at Ashoka or YF right now, who would be applying. And of course, also be ready for, being exposed to a lot new world, a lot new perspectives, which probably wouldn't think about. Because I think most of the people who come to YIF and Ashoka are still very young. And of course, by the nature of the age, they do have the limited experience by that time, but YIF accelerates that multiple folds. And so be ready for a lot of new experience. And that would be both thrilling and painful because, and I would say painful experience is necessary because if everything is going nice, then probably you are not learning new things.
Yeah, I think Deepak, you beautifully encapsulated all that I also want to say in pleasure and pain go together. And you're just saying that I think it's good to be ambitious, it's good to have that drive and passion, but we also need to have the humility to go through that slow process of getting there. And as I said, I really that way, for me at least, it was taking really step by step. And that meant, for instance, and some on job when I was working at the center and as an engineer, for instance, we never had to use emails. We never had to write much at all. It was basically mathematical and equations and so on. So I even took that bit of learning how to write an email, proper email, very seriously. And I think thankfully that way Madhavi used to give me even feedback on such things. And I now replicate that in my critical writing classes that you need to even think about your emails that you send to people. But really that you take every step seriously. Think about what needs to be worked upon in the moment now. For instance, again, yes, and especially in this journey, you always have that sort of lack of confidence that, I don't have a degree in this discipline. Am I a right fit? Am I ever going to catch up? Well, do something about it. For me, it was really, and that was thankfully also because I was at Ashoka. I just took undergraduate classes, taking extra time out of my hectic work schedule because I just wanted to cover that up. I didn't want to give myself an excuse that, I'm not going to lag behind because, I just didn't do my undergrad in a very specific discipline. So that kind of sincerity in the process that you go through and humility in learning from every bit of experience is, I think, really important, especially in that kind of sharp turn that you go through.
So as we are winding down, maybe some rapid fire questions to both of you. Do you have any role models in your family or circle of friends? Of course, this is not just yes, no, but who would those be?
I think sorry, Deepak, go ahead.
Go ahead, Shiv, you started before.
No, I was just saying that I would say not one, but two, which is my mother and my mentor, Madhavi. And if I were to just quickly add, because I think I learned a lot from my mother on how to think interdisciplinarily. After her marriage, she was from sciences background, but after her marriage, she did 3 MAs in sociology, economics, and history for different reasons. But, and at the time, I remember, I didn't really take it as a conscious lesson, but I think it really shows up in the way I feel curious about a lot of things too. So.
Thank you, Deepak.
Yes. My family, including my, mother and father, everyone would be very special to me, and I would be nothing without them. But Pramath sir, I think, and it's not a flattery, it's not because I'm associated with YIF, but really you have been my role model. Because one thing I studied at Stanford, one of the best people characteristic is they are hugely capable and they are hugely warm. And I see you, Pramath sir, right at that top right corner with extreme warmth and extreme capability. And you have been my role model since I came to YIF because, and I haven't seen such person like you before and even after that. So thanks for all. And I don't think it's just me. I think everyone at YIF and Ashoka, just like you from heart.
Oh, wow. I'm completely blown away. I did not expect this on a public forum, but thank you. I'm really grateful. I don't know what to say, but thank you. In continuing with this, what would you both say to your 15-year-old version of yourself? What would you say to your 15-year-old version of yourself? What would you tell yourself to do if you're 15 years old and you knew what you know now?
Yes. I would say that, we always don't take much stress because I think I was the one who was taking a lot of stress. And I think it's still my habit is, but don't take much stress in the life. Do have some anxiety is okay, because if we push ourselves, if we do have some vision, there is some anxiety, and which is healthy, but don't stress yourself. And because life is a journey which is, always have ups and downs, and that's what it is meant for. Be hopeful and do your best, but don't be stressful. Also, I would like to give the importance of knowledge and humility. Try to expose yourself to as much as diverse things you can be.
I think for me also something that you said, Deepak, it kind of relates to. But I think putting it differently, I think I would say that don't be afraid to make a fool of yourself in some ways, because it is a difficult journey. But if you don't take your failures seriously and you just brush them off, I think, or you become too sad and depressed about them, I think it's really hard to get past it. And I know even at YF at one time, and this is, I don't know, Pramath, whether you'd remember, because I used to pester you that, we need to have an MLS in psychology, because I was so convinced I really want to just study psychology at YF at the end of it. So, that kind of things that you might be really confident about one thing, but that might completely drastically change. So don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid to say that, I used to say this thing and, how stupid I was. I think it's a part of learning how to make mistakes, but how to rectify them too when you go forward.
Amazing point, Shiv. And from, if you can give me permission, I would like to add on the Shiv's point that yes, don't become disheartened by failures. I mean, I can tell about myself. I've been in situations so many times I literally felt there's no way forward. I had given no exams after 12th. I dropped out from IIT, and there a lot of other things happened. But as long as always get to work hard, and whatever a ray of hope, there's always a ray of hope. There's always a way which is might be very risky, might seem improbable, but find that and work hard on that, and then magic will happen. So never get disheartened by failures, because that's part of life and they're gonna come whole life.
If I may just quickly add, Pramath, I don't know, I just want to say that I think just taking off from there, that I think we're just too afraid to ask the wrong questions, because of which we don't ask the right questions. We forget that we need to first be asking questions so that those right questions can actually appear in our life, because we're just like, I'd make a fool of myself by asking this myself or to the others and so on. So I think that's something we really should remember.
I think you both ended this so beautifully. And I think if I remember correctly, in my earlier interactions and that little video that I have when I present Deepak to the class, he also uses this phrase, think of yourself that I'm a fool, and always keep yourself humble. And I think it's funny that, interesting that both of you use the same word, literally. Somebody recently asked me that, Pramath, don't you get bored talking to these people? Like you're going to do like 7 episodes, and where do you find the energy on a Saturday evening? And you seem so engaged. I think all they have to do is watch this episode. If we were to just hear your stories, how can you not be engaged? That's how I feel. So I actually look forward to doing these conversations, and thank you so much. Both of you have spoken from the heart. You've spent so much time giving a glimpse into your lives in ways that I think was otherwise not possible. We only see the achievements, we don't see the journey. And I have to tell you that you have both done amazingly well. The humility with which you speak comes through. It's not just that you're preaching, but you are practicing what you preach. And for that, I'm really impressed. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone who joined today, and hope to see you again next Saturday, same time, same place. Thank you very much.
So much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.